Hello everybody, this is Joe with Carbon Marine. Today I've got not so much a super exciting topic, but really important topic. It's kind of in the weeds. It doesn't get talked about a lot on social media, but it's really important if you fish from a flats boat or a poling skiff and you have a casting platform or you have a crail, which is our casting platform with a carbon fiber rail assembly to help keep you on the boat if the water's rough or if you've got equilibrium challenges. But today's video, we're going to talk about mounting hardware. How do you mount your casting platform or your crail or somebody else's platform, aluminum? Ours are all carbon fiber, but there are some folks out there making aluminum ones. How do you mount that to your skiff? I get a lot of calls, I get a lot of inquiries, emails, people asking me questions, and I thought, I'm getting enough calls and emails, I probably should film a session on mounting hardware, what's involved, how does it work, what are your options, why, and just kind of do a deep dive on stainless steel casting platform mounting hardware. So today's topic, casting platform mounting hardware. So, in today's market, most casting platforms are 12 to 15 inches tall. I have noticed over the 19 years of owning Carbon Marine, there has been a trend towards shorter platforms. Back in the day, before the great financial crisis of 2008, 2009, that time frame, there was a lot of redfish tournaments. A lot of guys were competitive fishing for redfish, and they'd use these towers and ladders and really tall, elaborate casting platforms or perches or something to look out. But when the market collapsed and great financial crisis happened, most of the tournaments went away. They're coming back now. Shout out to Kent Hickman and his tournament. We're a big long-term sponsor of that. But anyway, so going back, so the platforms over time have started kind of getting shorter. And I thought that was curious because what I also noticed was the demographic of people ordering casting platform hardware or ordering Carbon Marine casting platforms or Carbon Marine crails. I'll just say we've had a lot of calls and we've sold, I think in the last several weeks, we've sold like 5 or 6 crails and a couple casting platforms, which happened all at once. It's about that time of year coming into peak season. But how do you mount them to your skiff? So I'm going to start with the most common choice, and that would be mounting hardware for a casting platform that doesn't have any sort of superstructure or rail or anything that extends above where you stand on the platform. And that's important because if you have a casting platform that's just a platform and the load is just compression, meaning your weight on top of the platform and you just have to keep the platform connected to the boat, that's a pretty easy problem to solve, easy hardware solution. So we started off with a good old-fashioned carriage bolt. And if you're not familiar with carriage bolts, all that means is there's no hex on the head. It's like a mushroom. But how you hold it is this. If you can see, this collar underneath is square, right? So the way this bolt is designed is it goes into a carriage, hence the name, something stable or stationary, and then as you tighten the nut, this square collar can't rotate, and it allows you to tighten it, and you get this nice head without any sharp edges or extrusions or something that you can snag your toe on or hurt yourself. So the way this works is this gets mounted into the deck like that. So this is all that sticks up. We buy these carriage bolts and then we send them to a local machinist, and then he'll mill the head down and he'll drill it and tap it. We drill and tap to 1/4 inch 20 count thread. So that would go into the deck of the boat, and this 3/16 stainless washer would go under the deck, and this is a nylock nut so that the nut doesn't vibrate loose over time. We'll talk about mounting this in just a moment. I kind of want to run through all of the components of the system, and then we'll talk about some of the deeper, more difficult aspects of how this stuff gets mounted to the boat. So the next part of the system, so let's just pretend that this is mounted to the deck. The next part of the system is what we call the eye bolt. And the eye bolt's pretty straightforward. It just screws in there, and you might be able to see there's a little gap right here. So this is what we would call a rolled eye. All that means that this rod is shaped and it's rolled. And for platforms that are only platforms that you stand on, that don't have some sort of a rail or upper system that you can lean your body against, this is sufficient because the load is down. You're not going to get a lot of lateral load or leverage load where you're lifting because the platform is being tilted because you've got a lever and you're leaning against it. So next would come the stainless steel turnbuckle. Now we use super high grade 3/16 stainless steel. These turnbuckles are 1/4 28. All that means is the 28 part is there's 28 threads per inch instead of 20 down here. Now why would we do a different thread on the turnbuckle than on the eye bolt? Well, the eye bolt is a one and done. It's either mounted or it's not. There's no adjustment. You screw it in, you counterlock it with this nut, and that's it. But with the turnbuckle, you might have a platform that's 10 inches tall. Well, 10 inches, no, let me retract that. You might have a platform that's 14 inches tall, a platform that's 13 inches tall, a platform that's 13 and a half. This turnbuckle is completely collapsed. And in its completely collapsed shortest length, this will allow a platform from the mounting rib. So most of your poling platforms, there'll be the plate, the legs, and there's some kind of a rib that'll come out in the center. I'm going to change the view here, and we're going to look at it from the side like that, and it's going to have holes in it. Now these holes are important because it allows us casting platform manufacturers to build one standardized unit that can be adjusted 1 inch, 2 or 3, or actually from here to here is 5 inches. Our ribs have 6 holes and they're 5 inches apart. So it gives you the ability to adjust the platform in relation to the mounting point on the boat, because once you put this carriage bolt into the deck of the boat, that's it. This doesn't adjust anymore. So this gives you that adjustability, right? Now, the distance from here to the deck is what we call the range. So our systems, this eye bolt with this damn octopus, I need more tentacles here. This is the system. This is the connecting system. So this is in the deck, and this pin goes into one of these holes. So from the center of this pin to the top of this from the center of this pin to the underside of this head on this carriage bolt is what we call the range. Our hardware, what you're seeing here, has a long limit of 14 inches and a short limit of 10 1/8 inches. So what that means is, regardless of how tall your platform is, from your center hole to the deck of your boat, if it's between 14 inches and 10 1/8 inches, our turnbuckle system is going to safely connect that particular casting platform to your skiff, your boat. Now, this is a system that doesn't have any upper superstructure or rail or belly bar or lean bar. There's, all those are synonymous for some kind of a structure that you can brace yourself against if the boat's rocking, if you're older fella and you have equilibrium challenges. Maybe you have weak knees, maybe you have weak hips, and you need to just kind of lean back on something. That is becoming a lot more common, and the driver behind why I invented the crail. So a system that's only the platform will use this configuration, stainless steel carriage bolt, rolled eye bolt, turnbuckle, and pin. Now I want to show you something interesting about this particular pin. If you can see that, this clip, this ring that holds the pin, the safety piece, I like to take 2 pairs of needle nose pliers and bend that outside tag in a little bit. And why do I do that? I do that because look, I can just roll this and it comes right off and the pin can come out. Now, if this was on a casting platform, all this isn't open. This is going to be capped and you're going to be down, upside down, trying to get in there and get your fingernail in it to get it started. You're working too hard, man. Just take your pair of pliers, needle nose, and just put a little bend on the end of it, and it won't vibrate out, it won't come out, but it makes it easier to install, to take on or off. So if this is the assembly for a standard, no superstructure casting platform, I'm implying that there's something else. There's other options out there. So let's talk about that for a minute. Now this is an assembly that I cranked the turnbuckle all the way out. So that would be for the long end of the range. I haven't opened up the ends, tag ends on this ring. But if you'll look really close, see this eye, it looks different. This eye is welded. Now, why would we want that eye welded? Well, you would want that eye welded because if you had some sort of superstructure, if you had a casting platform or a crail, a carbon marine crail, that crail will be, here's your platform and your legs. Don't hate on me, I'm not an artist. And then you might have a grab bar, something like that. And then with our crail, this is kind of a loose interpretation. It kind of looks like that. There's front legs that kind of arc off. But the key here, the important part is this superstructure is there to support the angler. It's to give that angler security that he can lean back and not fear that he's going to fall, or he can lean over. More importantly, the way the crail is designed, you can actually put your legs, your knees, or your hips in these little pockets underneath these 2 front leg rails and lock your legs in, and that boat can move like crazy and you're not going to go anywhere. But that presents a structural problem for the attaching hardware, because all of this is high. Your body is massive. You've got mass, you've got weight. And you're way off, you're above where this thing is going to be mounted, right? So here's the deck. So this distance with all of the weight is a giant lever. So this can create quite a bit of force down here where your system is trying to connect to the deck of your boat. So think of how a claw hammer works, right? Claw hammer. Hooked at the back, hammer, the hook's for pulling the nails out, you turn it upside down, you put it in there, and you use that handle to create leverage to extract that nail out of the wood. Well, this is the same system, just turned upside down. So you've got the handle here, and when you lean against that rail or you put a couple 100 pounds of force against that rail, it puts an extraordinary amount of energy on that eye bolt. It'll transfer through the rib, and it'll transfer right down to the moment of contact where this hook is in this eye bolt and this pin is in that rib on the platform. And we've got to manage that load. And that's why we use a welded loop here. This welded loop can hold a lot more force and force exerted against it and not open. I've actually seen a big fella on a Gladesman, this is 18 years ago, losing his balance on a normal platform, a big guy, this guy was like 250. And he grabs the platform to save himself because those Gladesmen are tippy. I love the boat, no shade on the Gladesman, it's part of the feature, not a bug, but they're tippy. And he was falling over and he tried to save himself and he's holding the platform. He generated so much force, it opened this up. And he ended up falling off the platform, and then the platform come off and he messed up the eye bolt and just the whole thing turned into a mess. But that's why we use a welded loop. That's why we use a welded loop on the eye bolt on anything with a superstructure, anything that's going to generate an extraordinary amount of leverage and force against this anchor point. Because the higher the weight is up and the heavier that weight, it creates more force on this anchor point. Which is another reason why that washer is so big, right? You want surface area. You want to disperse that energy across that deck so you're not, if you just put a bolt with one nut in there, it's going to pull right through. So to kind of rehash everything here, the important part, if you're looking at Carbon Marine and our mounting hardware, this is your operating range. So you measure from the center of your rib to the deck of the boat, and if it's between 10 1/8 inch and 14 inches, you can order the welded loop or you can order the rolled loop. You go with the welded if the platform is taller or it has some sort of a superstructure on it. Now, we've talked about the two different options that we have. We've talked about the range. We've talked about why we have the two different options. Let's talk about mounting this carriage bolt because that's kind of interesting. So I'm going to put some of this stuff down. Now, in the beginning of this video, I pointed out that there's this square collar, right? You can see it's square. This presents a problem when you're mounting this into a fiberglass deck. I know because I made this mistake. A brand new HPX 18, brand new. And we were mounting the carriage bolt in it. And this is a 1/2 inch shaft, by the way, so you drill a 1/2 inch hole. So I drilled the hole. If you're not aware of this, there's a trick to drilling holes into finished gel coat boats. And I can't remember where I learned this. I don't want to misattribute who I learned it from, but you tape off the area of the gel coat where you want to drill. And when I mean tape off, a 3 or 4 inch square, and you mat the tape down so it's really in good contact with the gel coat. And you start with a smaller bit. You don't start with a 1/2 inch bit. You start with, say, a 1/4 inch or maybe even an 1/8 inch, something small. And instead of running the bit in the normal direction where the bit is biting and pulling, you run it backwards. Because the way gel coat works is gel coat is just a layer on top of other layers. And when that drill bit is going down and it's spinning, the way the drill bit is shaped is it's going to want to lift as it hits each one of these layers. It's going to want to lift that layer and evacuate it. But if you'll reverse the drill and you spin that bit backwards, that bit's hard steel. It's very, very hard. And being careful and spinning it backwards, it will pulverize the gel coat layer. And then once you see the color change, let's say the boat's ice blue, what's underneath the gel coat's not going to be ice blue. So as you're spinning it, you'll see that pulverized gel coat start to turn into a dust, and then you'll see a color change where it's getting into the structural fiberglass or the tie coat layer or whatever's in there, the core or whatever. And you go all the way through with that small hole, and then you go up a size or two, and then you do the same thing. What you're trying to prevent by taping off the deck and by spinning that bit backwards is you're trying to prevent chipping. Chipping is where that bit, especially the bigger bits, will just grab, and it'll grab that gel coat and it'll chip it. And the problem with that is you got a very good chance that it's going to chip that gel coat area bigger than the head of the carriage bolt that'll cover that area. So you go slow, you always run it backwards until you've through the gel coat layer, see the color change, the pulverized dust change colors, and then you can forward it and run through the rest of the substructure underneath that gel coat layer through the deck. And I'll do it in three or four stages, start small and work my way up to the 1/2 inch. Once you get the 1/2 inch hole through, you're not done. That hole is round, and this carriage bolt, the collar is square. Now this is where I made the mistake. Rushing, not paying attention, working outside, so I was hot and I was miserable. You have to square out that opening, that hole. You have to make that 1/2 inch hole a little bit square. It's not hard to do. It's very easy to do. And it's only the top. You don't have to do it for the entire hole all the way through. It's only that top layer of the cured gel coat, tie layer, structural layer before the core. And I do it with a Dremel tool. I take a Dremel tool with a little 1/8 inch grinder bit or milling or a spiral bit, and I just carefully go in and just kind of let it sit in the corner, grind a little bit, then go to the next one, grind a little bit, then go to the next one, grind a little bit, and make 4 pronounced holes. And then I'll stop and I'll take the carriage bolt and I'll dry fit it. If you take this carriage bolt with a square collar and a 1/2 inch round hole in a gel coated deck on a hatch or on the deck of the boat, and you just drop it in there and goop a little silicone or 5200 around it, and you get your buddy to go underneath the deck and put this washer on, and you guys start screwing this thing together, you're up top, you're up on the top of the deck holding it with a screwdriver through this eye bolt, because this is all locked together, it's bottomed out and locked together, and you're holding it, and then he's tightening it, because you can't turn the carriage bolt assembly because it's squared off. You got to turn the nut on the bottom, and he's turning and he's turning and he's turning. If you haven't squared that round hole out sufficiently, the corners of this collar is going to compress the gel coat on the deck, and you're going to have a running spider crack, 3, 4, 5 inches, 4 of them opposite of each other. And you're going to be really mad at yourself, because the only way to fix that is to re-gel coat that area, and that's an expensive pain in the ass. So err on the side of making sure when you're squaring out, and you can do it with a file, you can do it with a triangular file. This stuff it's not hard to do, you just have to know to do it, because once you go one step too far, the repair is a pain in the ass. So square that hole out and dry fit it, dry fit everything. That carriage bolt shouldn't just fall into it, because if it just falls into it, you may have made the hole too big, and now you run the risk that water might come in through and around this head. Even though you 5200 all that, which you should, because once you put this in your deck, it's not coming out. There's no reason to ever take this carriage bolt out. It's done. It's a part of the boat. So just take your time. It'll take it 5, 10 minutes. It's not hard, but you got to be patient and just trim it, check it, and dry fit it. And once it all dry fits well, then you get out the 5200 or the silicone, something that can provide a weatherproof, waterproof seal. And you drop this in and you hold it. You do not let this carriage bolt, eye bolt assembly rotate, or all you're going to do is waller that hole out bad. And then you will have some water intrusion problems long term. And you have somebody underneath. Now this nylock is pretty aggressive. This is a 1/2 inch. This takes some force. So you got to get a guy under there that goes slow and careful, and you're holding the top and he's holding the bottom, and you tighten it. Now, what you don't want to do, and this is really important, is you want to make sure you're paying attention to how tight it's getting. You may pull up on it a little bit just to see how much slack is that. You do not want Billy Bob, the 280-pound buddy that's down underneath there with a cigarette burning in his mouth, just cranking down on it, because if he over tightens it, he's going to pull this head into the deck and then it's going to crack. there's a spot that's just right. And that's when this head is flush to the deck and you don't have any dimpling or compression because he's over tightened it. That's critical, or else it's a nightmare. Plus, if you dimple it, it becomes like a little depression that'll hold water. And that water eventually will find its way in and go into your core and get down into the hatch or underneath or wherever what's underneath that part of the deck. But once all that is in and you've tightened it properly, not over tightened it, not too loose, you don't want a gap. If you're using 5200, here's another hack. You can take WD-40, so you'll have 5200 all gooped up all around here, and you can take that WD-40 and spray it on a napkin, a paper towel, and it'll wipe that 5200 right off, and you'll have a nice clean transition. Once you're done grinding and drilling and grinding, peel the tape off. You don't want to mount this on top of the tape. I forgot to mention that little break-in sequence. But that's it. That's what it takes. Now, we've had customers actually buy the eye bolt, one turnbuckle, one eye bolt, and two carriage bolts because they have a trolling motor. So if they're fishing by themselves, they want their casting platform back so they can run the trolling motor remotely from the back. If they're fishing with fly fishing with a partner, they don't want the trolling motor on there. They're not going to use it because they got a guy in the back pushing. So then they want that casting platform more forward. So they use multiple mounting locations, and that's possible to do. This particular system is what we call a non-blind. Non-blind just means that you can get under the deck. Now, if you can't get under the deck, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. I'm not prepared to discuss right now. There is a way to do it. I don't have the stuff here in front of me to include it in this video, but there is a way to put a mounting solution into a deck that you cannot get access to from the bottom. That's called blind. You can't see or get under there or deal with it. It's very rare. Today, it's actually very rare, but it can be done, and maybe I'll do a video on that later. It's not that popular. It's not that common. But yeah, that kind of wraps up how you mount this permanent carriage bolt into the deck. You know, the pitfalls, the things to look for, the things to avoid. And we've talked about the importance of a welded hook versus a rolled hook. If it's just the platform with no upper superstructure, you don't need the welded hook because these are kind of expensive. They're actually not designed for lifting, but they are significantly stronger than the rolled eye bolt that we would use if it was just the casting platform by itself. Another important thing to take into account, and I hear this, and I remind my customers about this all the time, stainless doesn't mean stain proof. And depending upon, I try my best to buy premium stainless steel and the only way I know that is I buy it from different sources and I see how long before it turns rusty or starts to corrode or I start having discoloration or issues with it. And I remember where I got the ones that don't, this stuff, and I buy those. And they're not the cheapest, but there's nothing worse than paying for stainless steel. Then you got to go back every 6 months or a year and use toilet bowl cleaner or rust remover to get the rust off of the stainless, you know. But the joke or the point is it's stainless, not stain proof. So you need to oil these. You need to clean them once in a while. You need to make sure the second they start getting rust and pit on them, it becomes even worse because now it's going to get on gel coat, it's going to stain. So, you know, one of my hacks is I just use rubber gloves and toilet bowl cleaner and a sponge, and I'll just go hit it with toilet bowl cleaner and it'll clean up. It's enough of a chemical reaction to clean the rust residue off without, you know, pitting or smoking or, you know, causing, you know, crazy destruction to the metal itself. It's kind of working on the surface to get the rust oxide off. I think I have covered everything that I wanted to cover in this hardware video. But the key takeaways that I get the most questions for: what is the range of operation for our system of mounting hardware? And if you remember to measure from your hole on the rib of your platform to the deck, and if that distance is between 10 1/8 of an inch and 14 inches, our standard carbon marine mounting hardware will work. Joe, what do I do if I'm above? What if it's longer than 14 inches? What do we do then? Buy a longer turnbuckle? No. Here's the irony of turnbuckle industry. You can buy longer turnbuckles, but the problem with buying a longer turnbuckle is they scale the whole system to bigger. I can't buy this turnbuckle 4 inches longer and still with a 1/4 gauge thread, or wire gauge is the right way to say it, wire gauge. So when I move to something that'll service, say, 16 inches, this goes to 3/8. The turnbuckle weighs 2.5 pounds and costs $125. And it's got a load-bearing strength of like 2,000 pounds. It's overkill. We don't need all that on a poling skiff. So here's the workaround. Let's say you've got a platform and you need a 1/4 turnbuckle, standard duty, and an eye bolt to service a platform that's 16 inches from the rib to the deck. Well, that's not that much of a problem, because all we do is we just go get a longer eye bolt. The longer eye bolt will just be longer, same gauge, diameter, and it's a lot less expensive than buying the whole turnbuckle assembly. And at the end of the day, it won't matter. So when you're scalloping or not fishing or want the deck of the boat cleaned off, you just take the eye bolt off. So you go from a 3-inch eye bolt to maybe a 5-inch eye bolt to make up that range. But that's something we can help you with. If you can't figure that out on your own, give me a call and I'll walk you through your options. But yeah, not a super exciting topic, but I get this call a lot. I get a lot of people struggling to put together, how do I mount my casting platform? Oh, I can't find this, I can't find that. We have done this for years, and I actually sell probably 5 times the amount of hardware that we do the actual platforms, because people realize it's an easy way to look, click, 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 and buy it, and it works. And it's premium grade. It's very good stainless steel. And my phone number will be on every order, and if you need questions or you don't know this video exists, you can call me and I'll walk you through how to mount it. Joe with Carbon Marine. You can always reach me at jwellborn, that's JWELBOURN at carbonmarine.com. Website's carbonmarine.com. Office number is 813-284-7040. I hope this has helped you get your head around or give you a good overview of casting, platform, and crail mounting hardware that's offered by Carbon Marine. Thank you.